Hey, I'm Caleb. Like most of you right now, when I was in high school, I had a crush. Ooh, I know, whatever. So it was the summer going into my junior year, and there was this girl that at first I was like, she's kind of cute. And then a month into summer, I'm like, this is about to be my wife, right? And I'm like planning our future together, like how many dogs we're gonna have, because we need dogs. What our kids' names are gonna be, where we're gonna live. Like, I had the perfect life planned with this woman. She just didn't know about it yet. So the end of summer comes, I kind of still have feelings for her. I was kind of getting over it. And she texts me and she says, I don't know how we got into this, but we're having a conversation. And she says, hey, are you like into anyone? And I'm like, this is my chance. So I'm like, I was like kind of into you over the summer, but still figuring it out. I had it figured out, but like I'm figuring it out. Like, hey, are you into anyone? She goes, well, I'm like into puppies and rainbows. I swear, that's exactly what she said. And I almost chucked my phone into the wall. I was like, are you kidding me? And that's not even the worst part. 2 weeks later, she started dating my older brother. That caused a lot of fun conversations in my house. But the thing is, when it comes to dating and our search for the one, it can be hard to have a clear perspective or a healthy outlook on life. I remember it was for me. The emotion that we feel, good or bad, is powerful and consuming, which can make handling it in a positive way and seeing the big picture difficult. At some point, most of us have probably been in that position. We have had a crush on someone who didn't return the feeling, and then we feel rejected or disappointed or sad. Maybe that crush was in kindergarten, or maybe you're living it right now, or maybe this isn't about a specific person, but maybe you feel this way about dating in general. And this may not be true of everyone in the room, and that's okay, but maybe for some of you, it feels like it's easy for anybody to get a date, except for you. Or maybe you feel like everybody cares about getting a date and you just aren't that interested in dating right now, or maybe ever. Whether you're choosing to be dateless or not, sometimes being on the outside of a dating culture can feel really lonely. There's so many emotions that come with the letdown of not dating and wanting to, or getting turned down by someone else. Nothing about it is easy. In this series, we're talking about dating and that idea we all have or have heard about, finding the one. Maybe not the forever one, but the one that we really want to be our one. Even though statistics tell us most high schoolers aren't in a relationship right now, somehow, dating still feels like a big deal, doesn't it? It's because the idea of being more than friends brings a lot of emotions and feelings with it. And feelings are a powerful thing that can mess with our perspective and be overwhelming. In fact, King Solomon, one of the most famous kings of Israel, wrote something that speaks just to that in the book of Proverbs. He says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." Looking at my old high school crush, the medicine I thought I needed, the thing that would cure my insecurity, my loneliness, and my feelings, I thought was a relationship. More specifically, it was a relationship with one particular person. That would fix everything. Maybe you feel the same way. But Solomon says something different. A cheerful heart is the cure. In other words, a sense of joy is the cure and the medicine to feeling down. He didn't say that the answer to having complicated hurt or disappointed feelings is found in perfect life circumstances and getting what you want, including a relationship. The second half of the verse goes on to say, a crushed spirit dries up the bones. A broken spirit will weaken you and wear you out. It's more than having a bad day or feeling bummed out. A crushed spirit is letting a bad day or week become a way of life. The word crushed captures it perfectly. It refers to the feeling of being weighed down by unhappiness because of life circumstances. It's seeing all of life through your difficulty, allowing your perspective to be controlled by what isn't going well. But whether you're feeling cheerful or crushed, I think what Solomon is saying is this: how you feel on the inside never just stays on the inside. It eventually seeps into the rest of your life. Chances are, some of you can relate. Some of you have noticed that your dating life or lack of a dating life is affecting the way you feel about everything. And you wish you had a cheerful heart like Solomon says, but how? It's not like you can suddenly be thrilled that you're single. It's not like you can not care that you just went through a breakup. It's not like you can deny how you feel and pretend everything is totally fine. Maybe you've heard your parents say things like, "You just need to change your attitude," or "Cheer up, kiddo." And you've wondered, is that even something people can do? And who says kiddo anymore? Actually, a lot of the writers who contributed to the Bible seem to think there's a part we can play when it comes to choosing a cheerful heart. Over and over in different times, places, and circumstances, the writers of Scripture say things like rejoice, or be glad, or be of good cheer. And I imagine their original audience thought things like you and I do. They probably wondered things like, is that even possible? How does someone actually change how they feel when the life they're experiencing is hard? One of the times we see this is in a letter from the Apostle Paul to the church at Philippi. Paul was one of the most influential leaders in the history of the Christian church. He wrote letters to the churches he started, and one of those letters is a book of the Bible that we now call Philippians. Toward the end of his letter, Paul says this: "Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice." Another translation says, "Always be full of joy." Now, before you start thinking this is just something you would find on a Christian greeting card, you need to know what life was like for the people in Philippi when Paul wrote this letter. For Christians around this time in history, being full of joy wasn't always easy. They faced persecution, danger, and the potential of being harmed simply because they believed in and followed the ways of Jesus. Yet, Paul calls them to rejoice and then continues by reminding his readers of some things they can do to make that happen. He talks about treating people well, prayer, and being grateful for all the good things they had. Then he says something that I think could be a game changer for you, especially if dating or anything else has bummed you out. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Basically, Paul is saying that what you think about matters. Having a cheerful heart and not having a crushed spirit are both connected to what we think about. They're not simply affected by our outward circumstances, like whether we're dating or not dating. Our feelings follow our thoughts. Now, I realize that comparing rejection or difficulty with dating to first century danger and persecution is a bit of a stretch. But here's why I think all of this connects to what you and I feel today. We all face circumstances and hardships that can take up all of our attention. Challenging events like a breakup, a crush who chooses someone else, or just the way dating can consume everyone's attention when you aren't that interested, can take up all of our time and energy and completely change our mood. That's understandable because it can feel like being crushed, as Solomon mentioned. That's why it's important to point out what Paul isn't saying. He isn't saying to ignore your feelings or that the disappointment of rejection is nothing compared to what early Christians went through. Paul isn't saying to just suck it up. No one is trying to talk you out of what feels really difficult at the time. Paul's saying that no matter what kind of difficulty you're going through, the feelings you have don't have to become your whole world. This is good news, because it means that we have a lot more control than we think. It doesn't mean that our circumstances or experiences don't bother us, but we have the power to decide that it's not the only thing we'll think about. We have the power to choose what we think about. We don't have to let the things that disappoint or frustrate us dominate our thoughts. A bad moment doesn't have to turn into a bad mood or a bad day, a bad week, or what feels like a bad life. Just because one part of your life makes you unhappy, even if it's an important part, doesn't mean that all of your life is bad. Paul is telling us to make a shift in how we think. Why? Because when we don't change the way we think, we lose perspective. And a loss of perspective takes away our power and gives it over to our circumstances. Before we know it, our circumstances crush our spirit. When we say perspective, what we mean is this. Perspective is how you see in a situation. A lost perspective means we take what feels bad right now in one part of our life and make it the way we see everything all the time. The amazing thing is perspective doesn't just happen. You actually get to choose it. Feelings and emotions have a way of coloring how we experience life. You may wake up one day feeling sad or angry, and so the day starts and you see the rest of the day through that lens. Or you may be going through your day and remember something amazing that's gonna happen tomorrow, and that makes you excited for the rest of the day. Feelings have a way of just showing up. They can influence our perspective. However, there's a better way to live. Feelings are good and natural, but they do not have to control your life. As your feelings show up, you can decide the impact it will have on your day. You can decide where you put your focus. The point is, every day you get to pick your perspective. You don't have to allow feelings to be in control of how you experience life. In other words, you pick your perspective. The choice is yours. It's okay to want to date. It's even okay to be frustrated by it. It's okay to not want to date and feel separate from those that do. But it doesn't have to be the main thing you focus on. When it feels like it is the thing that determines your perspective, it's time to take a step back. It's time to pick a new perspective. That doesn't mean you're gonna suddenly feel differently, but it does mean you decide to control what you can. And your attention, focus, and view of the situation is in your control. The truth is, no circumstance, dating or otherwise, is gonna give you the cheerful heart you want. You're also not stuck with a crushed spirit just because things aren't going the way you want in your dating life. You can change your attitude. You can focus on something more important because there is so much more happening in your life. There's so much more going on in your world. Sometimes it just takes a little effort to remind ourselves of that. So let's practice for a second. Let's go back to what Paul wrote and take some cues from him. You don't have to answer out loud, but in your mind, answer a few questions. What negative thing has your full attention right now? How do you feel about that? Why is it important to you? Now, before we move forward, I just want to remind you that it's important to feel your feelings, all of them, even the ones that aren't fun to feel. Here's the good news. Being able to name your not so fun feelings allows you to see that difficult things and joyful things can exist at the same time. Yes, you might have all sorts of feelings around that negative circumstance that has your focus, but there's more to life than just that. Like the church in Philippi, you can go through difficult things and still have joy. You can be disappointed in how dating is going, but still pay attention to the other areas of your life that are pretty good. In fact, I want to show you what I mean. I want to ask you a few more questions, but before doing that, let me remind you of this. No matter what your dating situation is or what you want it to be, you are a whole person just the way you are. You are not incomplete. You are not lacking. You are not less than. You are not just killing time until the right person comes along. You are enough, just the way you are. And when you pick that perspective to start from, no matter what the dating reality is you're dealing with, you are far less likely to live with a crushed spirit. Now, to help kickstart the process of picking a better perspective, let me ask you a few more questions. What is one thing going really well in your life right now? Who's one person you're grateful for? What's one talent you're really glad you have? What's one thing you're proud of yourself for? What's one thing God has done that makes you thankful? Chances are you can't answer all of those right now, but I'll bet one or two answers came to mind. Some really good things are happening in your world right now. So in the words of the Apostle Paul, think about such things. Let your mind stay there. It doesn't mean you ignore difficult things or challenging things with dating or life in general. It's just not your focus. As your focus changes, you may just find yourself feeling better about the dating scene because it's in a proper perspective. What would your life look like if you were living with a hopeful perspective, even when you don't feel like it? It's bigger than dating. There are all sorts of things throughout life that may tempt you to stay frustrated and angry. But when things aren't necessarily going the way you want, I want you to know that you have more power than you think you do. Your dating circumstances and life circumstances might change throughout high school. You can't control that, but you can control how you respond. You pick your perspective. Take it from Solomon, the wisest king to have ever lived. Your heart is too important to leave in a broken place, but a simple change in where you focus can make all the difference in the world.